And now it's Deborah Cobelt Live and the Little Italy Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today on our podcast. And joining me is Marianna Cuomo Maier. Thanks for joining us, Marianna.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now we're going to start with that mouthful of an intro, okay? Because you've done an awful lot, okay? You are the founder of Grata Wellness. You're on the national board. You're a national board certified coach and founder of Grata Wellness. You also work with the Italian Language Foundation, which your mom Margaret founded. And she's also a well-known cardiologist. She's recently written a book. In fact, I'm going to be talking to your mom, I believe, later on this week about the work that she's done. You're a proud Italian American. You also write for Appetito magazine, which was founded by another great Italian American, Andrew Cotto, and he suggested that we do this interview, as well as Amy Riolo. She does a lot of writing on Mediterranean diet. And finally, you come from a well-known family in politics and journalism. I grew up with your grandfather, Mario Cuomo, governor of New York. It was like so exciting. Whenever he was talking on television, my parents, as Italian Americans, go, "Look, he's Italian. He's the governor of New York." It was like such a big deal. And then, of course, your uncle Andrew was also governor. And Uncle Chris is a well-known journalist who worked with CNN and now News Nation. And if we have any more time for the podcast after that interview, I have an introduction. I have no idea. Thanks for joining us, Marianna.
And thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, so let's talk about wellness, okay? Because that's like a buzzword that's sort of everywhere. Were you always like super healthy looking? How did you get into this whole business of wellness?
It's a great question, and the short answer is no. But the long answer starts with my mother. You've mentioned she's always been an advocate for healthy eating and lifestyle. And my dad, who was involved in entrepreneurship and fitness before it was trendy. So it does make a lot of sense now, but I think I had to get there my own, which I think many of us can relate to. And I have been familiar with the ideas of perfectionism and high achieving kind of my whole life. As you mentioned, my family that I'm very grateful to have been raised in with, high values and morals, and also high achievers. And I attended Yale after graduating high school. So I was around a lot of people with very high ideas of achievement. And after graduating from college, I embarked on Teach for America, where I was teaching on the south side of Chicago as a pre-K teacher with no experience and, very little knowledge of what I was doing. And because I felt what I was doing was really important, just totally neglected my sense of self, and taking care of myself was the first thing to go. So I wasn't eating breakfast in the morning. If I had time for a meal, it was certainly not balanced and nourishing. And I was staying up really late and I was really stressed. So all of this kind of markers for an unhealthy lifestyle. And it wasn't until the COVID pandemic, which obviously was such a challenging time for so many, but it was the first time that I had a breath to look at myself, to see my family, and to realize what a shell of myself I had turned into. And so
Oh,
the long
wow.
story short is I really took that time to work with functional and integrative medicine practitioner, where I learned about my body physically, but also mentally engaged in stress management and self-care practices, and found this version of myself that was really healthy and really well, and knowing that that encompasses the holistic kind of picture beyond just eating and exercise and things like that. So
Let me dial it back for a second for when you were a teacher. Did you sometimes look at what the kids were eating if lunch was served in school and say to yourself, well, no wonder why we're in this trouble here in this country? Tell me about that.
absolutely. I think, I was very fortunate to have been raised and went to private school where, again, my mom was part of the healthy eating endeavors, and we were eating beautiful plates of food. And to see what my students in Chicago were eating was really troubling. First of all, they were never served water, which I just couldn't get over. It was milk all three
Oh,
meals and snack. So I would bring in water bottles to allow them to drink water because I believe in drinking
wow.
water. And breakfast was filled with either cereals or sugary,
Mm.
pre-made pancakes and waffles with syrup. And um, lunch and snack were often processed and not usually a vegetable or a intact fibrous vegetable in sight. And it was really troubling, honestly, to see firsthand. And beyond that, just knowing what snacks were being brought in, not only by parents, but teachers too, what the kids were excited to see and looking forward to eating. And post my sort of wellness renewal, where I brought back some mindfulness practices and we did some kiddie yoga, but we also did an exploration of whole foods and looking at a carrot with its roots on from the ground and exploring heirloom tomatoes and different varieties of fruits and vegetables. And not only how they're made, how they're grown, but also that they can taste really good. And just because they're not slathered in a sauce or fried, that they can actually be something that the children really enjoyed.
It can be something they enjoy. It can be colorful. It could be made to look fun, right? Because those packages that everyone is purchasing from the store, it looks fun, right? They have cartoon people on them, but we can do it. We can figure out a way, and I'm sure that you showed them this is how you can grow it too, right?
Yes,
So
completely.
kids can realize that you don't just have to go out and buy something. So that's a big thing that you did for these kids. I'm sure that it stayed with them.
I hope so. And the piece about teaching that I missed was obviously the children. I miss singing songs all day long and definitely seeing little minds speak their mind, and also how impressionable and full of life. It was a really amazing experience.
Yeah, an amazing experience, but also it was taking a lot out of you because you were exhausted, right? You were grabbing food. What was your go-to food that you would grab? I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
I think there was definitely a freezer waffle period, and that was really
Oh,
because I had to put those in the toaster. And then I pretty
mm,
much relied on processed bars of sorts,
right,
nothing
right.
or anything I could
Yeah,
grab. Yeah.
yeah. Pizza was mine. Any form of pizza. It doesn't matter if it came at midnight to the door, or if I
Yeah.
was walking down the street in Manhattan because I lived in Manhattan during my early career. It's like I would pass the pizza parlor. That was it. Lunch, breakfast, dinner. I mean, whenever it was available, that was my
Yeah.
go-to. Probably not as bad as something packaged, but still can't live on pizza alone, right, everybody? So, this was starting to take over your life a little bit. You weren't feeling well. What were your symptoms when you just weren't feeling well? Did you have a lot of anxiety? Were you putting weight on? What was it?
I think it kind of involved a lot. And I saw this again when I worked in a startup next. So I thought I was moving into the health and wellness space. And a lot of these
Right.
things were present then as well, where I wasn't sleeping well. And I had a real sort of attachment to my phone, where the first thing I would do was check my emails. Also kind of an aversion to seeing the messages and seeing whatever was on my plate and what, challenging situation or stressful thing I needed to work on there. Um, so the sleep, the energy, I was always dragging. Afternoons were really challenging. I definitely didn't feel my most wonderful self physically because I wasn't eating in a way that supported that. I also viewed exercise as more of a response. So, okay, I've eaten this way or I haven't taken care of myself. So now I have to do a 1 hour, terrible kick my butt class that I'm going to dread. And, it wasn't any kind of sustainable schedule or joy in the movement whatsoever. So there was that piece. And I also had real discomfort and what I learned to be an unbalanced gut. So a lot of indigestion and other digestive issues, which I learned was an unbalanced gut after I spent time working with that practitioner during the pandemic.
So, what's the first thing that you did to get yourself back in control? What was the protocol? Like, what was it? I know it's multifactorial, right? So, what did you do?
I think the first piece I learned, which honestly I see myself doing with clients now, is just the awareness phase. So
Yeah,
before changing anything, what are you doing? What are the
yeah,
behaviors that you're doing, turning yourself on to knowing how you're eating in a day, how you're sleeping, how you feel waking up, how your body feels when you go for a walk or when you rest. And then learning those patterns and seeing on the days that I do this or the times that I do this, I feel this way. Because I think there's a real learning curve. In order to know how you feel good, you have to know when you don't feel good. And in order to
yeah.
feel energized, you need to know what depleted and drained feels like. So I think that first piece of just awareness of we're not going to change anything, live and be more intentional, be more aware of how you're living.
Hmm. We talked about this on the phone. there's an addiction component. I know I have it, right? Like, and I'll give you my pizza example. If I
Yes.
have pizza, I will think of it the next day. I'll think of it as I'm just sort of laying in bed at midnight. There's this thing where I want more of it. Or even cereal, right? There's stuff that gets in my body. And then, even though I could go through a terrific wellness program where I know what I'm supposed to do, I don't do it, right? I'll just say, oh, the heck with it. What do you do with an entire nation that seems to have this issue? Because we're so hooked on stuff that's prepackaged, and we all know that it's addictive. It's addictive as anything else is. How do we get off that?
That is a really good question. And I don't think I'm going to have as simple an answer as I would like. But I
No,
think
it's
a
okay.
part of it is realizing that it's often very simple. And,
Mm,
you know, rather than thinking about new diets or specific protocols or very fancy tools that we all need to have and infrared saunas and all these amazing add ons, often it is sleep, it's eating whole foods in their natural state and, simple preparations. The Mediterranean lifestyle, I know it's technically Mediterranean diet, but the whole idea of that is eating things in their form that is, prepared with olive oil and light seasoning and enjoying the bounty of the soil and what's created from the earth and moving our body, right? And if we can do sort of those things, I think a lot of us see how good we feel. And it's that kind of positive momentum in those small things that we're doing that I think provides greater momentum, right? As you said, once you're having the pizza, once you're having the cereal, you want more of it. But I
yeah,
speak to so many people who exercise and have exercised and their pain goes away, or exercise and their, mental health challenges diminish, or their cravings diminish. And I'm not just saying that exercise is a blanket statement, but this
right.
idea sometimes it's these really simple, you know, uh, consistent and sustainable habits, not extreme in any direction, allowing ourselves to enjoy the yummy, meals with our families and dancing and maybe staying up a little bit too late while then also being able to get back to basics and back to routine the next day. I think there's also that kind of balance perspective.
Yeah, we have to figure out a way to be disciplined about it, right? If we're disciplined about getting to work every day, we should be disciplined about doing something for ourselves. I think that's the hard part. I really do. So you work one on one with people, right? You tell me about your business, like when you work with people. Tell me all about it, actually.
Wonderful. So I became a board certified health and wellness coach, first a certified coach, and then I sat for the board exam. But after I had been working in health tech, and while I was feeling that in my personal life, I was doing a much better job of, using these wellness modalities and these tools, I didn't feel like I was close enough to the impact, which I really have gained, from my family, that desire to want to help people to feel like you're providing an impact in a positive way. And with the experience of working with my own coach, I saw that my personal interests and my desire to help people was a profession, which is, becoming more and more popular. And fortunately, now there's a board, same board that certifies doctors and nurses that are certifying coaches. So
Mm,
there's a level of understanding for the pedagogy and standards being used as well. But I created Grata Wellness because I wanted to kind of make my own, um, forge my own path in the wellness industry. And rather than feel like I was putting a prescriptive sort of program on an individual, I didn't choose to use my name, right? Grata comes from the idea of gratitude in Italian, not a direct translation, but pretty close. And this idea that our perspective and our mindset has so much to do with what we do physically. And our results physically are often a result of how we think about ourselves and the relationship we have with ourselves personally. So in working with clients one-on-one or in groups, I'm also doing some corporate wellness as well. It's really about guiding individuals to thrive, this idea of thriving rather than just surviving. So coaching I love because it's not prescriptive. So I had to sort of take off my teaching hat when I was learning to be a coach and see a
mm,
different set of skills, which is about empowering somebody else to find the strength, find the skills in themselves rather than, feel like you have to rely on someone or there's some kind of guru or person you need to be reliant on forever, but instead empowering somebody to see, just as you said, we can be so disciplined and so, professionally and in our personal lives with our family and relationships and friends, we can be so dedicated in one sense, but not show that same kind of discipline, respect, care for ourselves personally. And sometimes even have been taught that that's selfish. And my, sort of counter to that is if you think about your relationship with yourself as the most important thing, it is a direct correlation to how you perform at work, your productivity, how you show up for the people in your life, your relationships. Like the better you are, the better you feel about yourself inside and out, the better you can perform in all those other areas. So it's been really amazing to sort of witness whether it's transformation or empowerment of each of these individuals and people that I've worked with to sort of see their growth and their progression just by getting to know themselves better, strengthening that sense of self, and then creating routines and habits that can adapt with life's inevitable twists and turns and funky things that are going to come up. It's how we adapt with them rather than relying on a perfect sort of hopeful setting and then getting thrown off track when something doesn't go right.
And it is great to have a coach because I'm somebody who will go all in, right? Like when I decided I wanted to get healthy or something, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years back, whatever. I went all in. So instead of just walking around the block, I started training for marathons, right? I did New York, I did LA, went wherever. Like I said, it wasn't just 5 blocks. I just went all in. And then when I stopped because I got an injury, I just stopped. And now I'm thinking, to get started, it's good to have a coach that you can talk to who can really help motivate you to find that source from within yourself to go do it again or do it in the first place. So, I mean, I think it's great that you help people find their best selves in there, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you have to do. You have to find yourself. Um, so is it like a program or it's like you create it like, because I know you also work with corporations.
Yes.
I guess it's tailor made, right?
Exactly. It really is. I think especially because a lot of people are very professionally minded. So have to be adaptable with work schedules and busy lives as well. So I would say the way that the format is varies a little bit different, but I think the thesis is very similar. Finding what drives you, finding what motivates you, and then gaining some accountability and guidance, but ultimately coming away with a toolkit of your own strengths and skills so that you can, deal with life's twists and turns without me in a few months' time.
Mm. I like that. I like that. Instead of like making someone dependent, it's doing it without you. I like that a lot. Let's talk about your family. Growing up Italian, right? Because that has a great impact in the way that we make our food, eat our food. Tell me about that. What was it like in your household, growing up Italian and eating Italian? I'm sure that you ate, an entire buffet of food, but tell us.
Yes. No, it's so true. I just wrote an article for Appetito about creating an Italian snack plate. And I remember that growing up, my mom would serve a beautiful plate of mozzarella, prosciutto, tirali, all these things. And my friends would come to my house, maybe first with, that face a child makes when they see something unfamiliar and maybe spooky to them, and then watching them try the food and love the food. And so that was a real fun experience because it was food I grew up as a baby eating, whether we were, traveling to Italy or eating in our own home on Long Island. There's definitely a big population of Italians and now Italian Americans. And I think that what's even beyond, so I mentioned my mom was always very helpful, creating wonderful meals. I learned different techniques with my grandma and learning from my grandma and family about my great grandmas and what they used to make from their different regions. But the real focus was always on whole food, whole ingredients. And the food itself, of course, it's important that it's delicious, but I think it goes a step further. It's really about the people with the food. It's the time you spend with your
Yeah.
family. It's the love that's put into the food. That's why I think the trope of the Italian mother wanting you to eat more and more, because it's a sign of her love, right? And
Yeah.
that's sort of a sign of mutual love and respect to enjoy the food somebody spent so much time and effort making. So I enjoyed the food, but I think I learned really how important that meal, that time around the table, the time spent together, what that really means.
Are people doing that? I know people are trying to get back into doing that, but are people doing it or just from folks you work with? Are they saying, oh, I have no time. I'm racing off to this? Because I remember when my kids were little, there was always something like baseball or whatever. And I used to say, because I grew up Italian and Sunday dinners were everything, it didn't matter what was happening. You're home. And I really tried to instill that in my house at least once a week. And it was hard. It was really hard. How do you do that in a world that sometimes doesn't honor um, taking time to eat?
It's such a good point. I think whether in my own experience, in clients and family and friends, convenience is key right now. We feel so pressed for time, whether it's in our transit or even working from home. Nobody feels that they have the time or the desire to sort of put together a whole meal. And even if you do take the time to make it, to sit down without your laptop, without your phone, without the TV, and actually enjoy the conversation. And so I think that what you mentioned is taking the intention and making an expectation of, in our family, we're going to find one night a week where we can all be together. It takes not only creating that desire, but then action planning around it and actually making it something that you all value and understand the importance of, and then are going to actively plan for it. So I think many people are either wanting to maybe eat more healthfully or eat without distraction and more mindfully, or find time for loved ones. Like, mealtime is a great idea. And, I always say this sort of jokingly, but if you can spend time getting up from work and going to the bathroom, you can spend time to take a few bites of your meal away from your device with, somebody else, who's, whether that's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And even if you live alone, right, that's a perfect opportunity for a FaceTime or that kind of connection where you
Yeah.
can reconnect with somebody and share a meal even virtually.
Yeah, I did that with my Italian relatives back east. We were Zooming, especially throughout COVID, and we would have meals together. That is important. So if you're not in the same town, you can Zoom it. Um, in fact, I have something I've been looking. I've been reading a lot about AI, robotics, and thinking, oh my God, what's going to become of us? It's like this is all we do. Now we're never going to stop. But in a weird way, maybe it'll give us some of our time back, right? It's
Right.
like you can just tell some robot to go do something. And then maybe you have more time to prepare your food and sit with your family in a weird way. But seriously, do you see a place in all this with AI coming up and actually it's here, robotics, or not really yet?
I think that there's a real value in using technology. I think the parallel
Yeah,
I would use is, let's say, social media. I think for
yeah,
many reasons, Instagram, TikTok, whatever source, it's really helpful because whether it's young women or any kind of group can learn more about issues that they might be dealing with that are not commonly talked about, with a wide variety of opinions, of perspectives, of knowledge. I think the danger with that is that it's each individual person. Not all of the information is true. And, sometimes things can go wrong. I think it sort of is a parallel with AI, right? There are so many things that we can gain with things becoming faster and more efficient and learning knowledge and having resources at your fingertips. I think it doesn't erase a personalized approach, like who you are as an
right.
individual to be different. And I think there is something to a human connection, right? That it makes in-person and visual coaching calls different than phone calls. And it
Yeah,
makes there is a difference, I think, interacting with a real person, hearing that. I think I just attended a webinar about coaching and AI, and is that really a threat, and what sort of does that look like? And I think the thesis is that there's so much that can be gained. There are very
yeah.
valuable tips and resources that an AI source could provide. It doesn't take away, or it doesn't replace that human aspect, feeling connected with, feeling heard, feeling yeah. So I think there's a human touch that is going to continue to be necessary.
Yeah, and enjoying each other over food. I mean, it doesn't even have to be hours. We would spend hours as kids. But then again, I just think that we were distracted with less stuff, right? There was one TV show on, I don't mean just one, but you know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
somebody was watching a certain TV show, everybody else on the block probably was too, because there were only a few channels. I guess I'm dating myself, but whatever. So, there was less distraction when we would sit down at dinner. So I think we can make it happen. I think, I agree with you with technology. Like I use Instagram and all that stuff for good. Like I only have people on there that I really want to follow because I'm excited to see like what you're doing, right? And I love the articles, by the way, that you're writing in Appetito. Could you tell us a little bit more about your focus there with Appetito magazine, which is an online magazine, and people please look it up. Andrew's done a terrific job. He's the founder. I really enjoy it very, very much. But tell us what you're doing there.
Yes, I have really loved meeting Andrew, learning about what he's creating and building with Richard at Appetito, and
Yeah,
all contributors are everything from pastry chefs to, lifestyle to just all of these wonderful people coming together and contributing their perspectives. And it's been really exciting to sort of apply a health and wellness lens to the Italian lifestyle. And, I have my little blog on Grata Wellness where I'll talk about different topics like positive mindset or the perfectionist to burnout sort of pipeline, those sorts of things. But now it's thinking about whether it's mindset, health, wellness, each of these tenets, and either how we can learn from the Italian mindset or, providing a wellness twist on something that, you probably think of like the snack plate example, or I think I talked about moving into the spring season, embracing the tips that the Italian lifestyle, would entail. So much of it is really, I think the biggest difference is whether it's through my experiences in Italy or learning from Italians, that so much of the experience of just living is kind of built in. You walk to work, you buy the produce that was grown near you, you spend time with family because you can, because you live near each other. And this obviously is not a blanket statement, but it's the sort of cultural idea. And how can we use that to sort of inspire ourselves here in the US? And a lot of the times, as I mentioned, less is more, right? It's not about feeling like we have to add all of these things on, but sometimes it's simplicity.
yeah. It's a modern traditional approach to all of
Yes,
this,
thank you.
right? A
Yeah.
little bit of that and a little bit of this. Before I let you go, anything that you can share with our audience about growing up with Mario Cuomo, because like I said, he was like everything. We should have had a little altar with Mario in our home. I'm not no, like I'm not kidding, because we came from, working class Italian in New Jersey, and to see that, one of ours made it was a really big deal to my parents. Anything that you can say about your grandfather that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, I first of all thank you for the kind words because it's so much fun to think
Oh
about
yeah,
him, remember him, and I think it's amazing to understand. And as a child, I grasped it, but to understand what a profound impact he had culturally and to know what a wonderful grandparent he was. And the
yeah,
fact that he was present at dance recitals and, all the major and minor moments, and seeing what a caring person he was. And also having some of those conversations, whether it was listening to them as a child or starting to have them myself when I was in high school. But he really believed in values and
yeah,
treating people with respect. And, his way of speaking was so profound, and anything from a riddle to the grandchildren or, a speech he was giving somewhere. And so I think learning from him and the work ethic and the respect and all of these sort of tenets as a family member, but also to see the profound impact he made on so many people's lives was certainly inspiring. And it makes me, you know, remember him in such a warm light and also feel so grateful to share him with so many people that he also impacted in such a positive light.
And as I said, I'm also an admirer of your uncle Chris. I think he's a terrific journalist.
Yeah.
I love that he just sort of says it as he feels it. He will go on both sides, and he'll give it to people if he feels like they deserve it. What
Yeah.
what's please give a shout out to him for me, would you please?
Yes. I
Um,
will.
anything you'd like to share to our audience about Chris, because I know a lot of my friends who are practically all journalists out here are big fans as well. Anything you can share about him?
I really enjoy watching him News Nation at 8 p.m. weeknights. And I think as you've shared, it's been really refreshing to see and learn about a lot of different issues on both sides of the aisle, and also learn the skill to also speak up and advocate when you believe in something and when something isn't right. And I think that that's, as a, people pleaser, I'm working on that one. So definitely a lot to admire in him as well.
Well, I think there's a little Italian in him when he does his interviews, right? Am I right? He's like, "Hey, you know, I don't
Yeah.
like that." You know, and I think that's because he's Italian. I'm pretty sure of it. So, please give
So
a shout out to him as well. But anything you'd like to add to our interview to tell our audience about you, where they can find you, and anything else that might be coming up?
yes, thank you. So I would love to meet and greet anybody on Grata Wellness on Instagram. That's also my website. And I think the piece that I would sort of leave you with, where you'll see on my posts and my blog and my newsletter, really this idea of prioritizing the relationship with yourself, as I said earlier, so that you can be there in the way that you want to be professionally and personally. So I use this expression that you need to fill up your cup. So fill
Mm.
up your cup with the things that help you be that best, brightest version of yourself so that you can pour into the cup of others. And just reminding yourself, nobody can pour from an empty cup. So it's something each of us, I think, can work on, and it's simple enough to remember. So I would love to connect with any of you, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I love the website actually, and I really, really love the work on the magazine as well. It's sort of common sense stuff, and
Yeah.
sometimes common sense stuff gets by us, right, as we're living our lives. So these are little reminders of how to do it. Fill your cup. In fact, I have a better one. Fill your cup with water because it's healthy too. So just go there and fill your cup up with water and see how you feel. And please, Grata Wellness, Mariana Cuomo Maier. I said that right. It's spelled Maier, right?
There you go.
Okay,
Yes.
but it's pronounced mayor. So I'm glad I got that right. It's really been delightful to have you on. And we will push this interview out to our audience because I really do think that they would enjoy what you're doing. Very, very much so. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that into our homes.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. And everybody, you can find our interview with Mariana on Deborah Cobelt Live and also our Little Italy podcasts. They're on YouTube, Facebook. We post promos on Instagram. And then as an audio platform, it's out there on iHeartRadio, on Apple, and honestly, anywhere that you get your podcast. Just put in the name of our show and, of course, Mariana, and we'll pop up. So I really appreciate it. Please tell your friends as well to join us. And we'll all see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye bye.